I am an avid court watcher. I clerked for Justice Sotomayor when she was a judge on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, and every June, just like you, I'm sure, I sit back and watch all of the opinions roll in. Well, this is a really interesting term for the court because the court's personnel changed substantially. Last year, at the end of term, Justice Anthony Kennedy stepped down and announced his retirement. And so his departure from the court really changed the landscape. And of course, as you saw in September, the person nominated to replace Justice Kennedy was his former clerk, Judge Brett Kavanaugh of the D.C. Circuit. Justice Kavanaugh is much more conservative in terms of outlook than Justice Kennedy, and so his appointment to replace Justice Kennedy provides a new kind of posture for the court. The court is decidedly more conservative with Justice Kavanaugh than it has been in a long time. And amidst all of those big changes in the court's personnel, there were a number of blockbuster cases that were coming up before the court that were really important to watch. There were a number of cert petitions that were percolating, especially on hot-button issues like abortion, and then as well some really politicized issues, including the recent case about the addition of a new question on the census, which has come before the court and is a matter of real expedience because the census has to be finished and all of the questions finalized before the end of June so that it can be documented and take place in 2020 as it's supposed to. Last term, the court decided to punt on procedural grounds a partisan gerrymandering case that came before it. The court has been wrestling with the question of gerrymandering for a number of years. It concluded that there cannot be an explicitly racial gerrymander, but it has never really come to any clear standard on what constitutes an unconstitutional partisan gerrymandering, whether the states have drawn congressional districts or state-level districts in ways that give an advantage to one particular party. So this is one of those issues that the court really can't duck forever. Gerrymandering cases are one of the cases that are not discretionary for the court. They have to take these cases. People are becoming really difficult on this. This is a question that even members of the court, including Justice Brett Kavanaugh, has said explicitly is something that the court can and should review. And so the big question coming up in the next couple of weeks is whether they've actually identified a workable standard and whether they're actually going to apply that standard in this case or avoid it again through another procedural punt. Usually things divide up pretty predictably and often along party lines. Last week we saw a lot of unlikely coalitions. Justice Ginsburg, a reliable anchor of the left, siding with Justice Gorsuch in a case called Gamble versus United States, which was about whether or not the double jeopardy rule prevented states from also prosecuting individuals for the same conduct that had led to a federal conviction. But the really interesting thing to my mind was not so much in who lined up with each other, but who went it alone and advocated his own position on a number of really hot-button issues. So Justice Clarence Thomas, who's often known to be the silent justice, he never really speaks an oral argument, and when he does, it makes news. But this week, Justice Thomas offered up a really interesting concurring opinion. And if you join that concurring opinion with the concurring opinion that he wrote just a few weeks ago in a case called Box versus Planned Parenthood, you get a really interesting picture of some of the dynamics that are going on the court, as well as the court's interaction with the public at large. In Box, Justice Thomas wrote a really stinging concurrence that was joined by no other member of the court. He argued that abortion should be understood as part of a larger social picture in which eugenics, the idea that we weed out the least among us in order to create a stronger race, was actually an animating feature of the birth control movement and Planned Parenthood's origins, placing it in a social justice frame that really divides not only the feminist community from those interested in racial justice, as well as those who are interested in disability rights. When you take that decision and look at it alongside his decision in Gamble versus the United States, you see an even clearer picture emerging. He's definitely laying breadcrumbs to undermine and perhaps ultimately overrule a precedent that he believes is demonstrably erroneous, Roe versus Wade. So what's next for the court? It's already the second to last week of the term, and we haven't gotten decisions on some of those blockbuster cases, like the census case and the partisan gerrymandering case. Those will surely be coming down, and I imagine they'll probably be the last cases to be announced by the court. This could mean a number of things. Could be that the justices are putting the finishing touches on any decisions, majority, concurrences, or dissents, or they're still hashing it out and trying to persuade their colleagues of their position. Either way, the next week is going to be a blockbuster week for the court as we wait for those blockbuster decisions to come down. So court watchers, stay tuned.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.